And first, we have a guest from Binota, Dhamai. He's an indigenous Chima Tripura from Chittagong Hill Tract, Bangladesh. And for 20 years, he has been an advocate and a follower of issues that deal with the indigenous peoples in parliament. He's currently affiliated with the Bangladesh Indigenous Peoples Forum and an executive council member of the Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact, AIPP. He has been recently appointed as an expert member of the UN Expert Mechanism on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, EMRIP, a subsidiary body of the UN Human Rights Council between 2009 and 2014. He coordinated and led the Asia Caucus in the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Peoples Issues and EMRIP. And he was a GCG member for Asia for the World Conference of Indigenous Peoples in 2014. It's great to see you, Binota and Ghazali, as usual. Let's start.
Hey, thank you so much, Tomo, for co-hosting this. I see there's an empty bookshelf in your background. So either you just moved in or you're moving out. Which one is it, by the way?
I am moving out, unfortunately. My wife and I are heading to Chile for some work with the Norwegian Foreign Ministry. But she already left today, and I'm leaving next week.
Well, thank you so much for helping out with this episode. I'm sure that you have many other things to do as well. Jumping right into it, yeah, Binota Moidamai, very good friend of mine, of ours, a very good friend of the movement, a very familiar face in the movement as well. Very glad that he could join the entire lineup, be with us. Yes, his resume is already very impressive and will only continue to be impressive. Let's jump right into it, Binota. We only have like 15, 16 minutes of time. Binota, how would you characterize where we are right now in the context of the Indigenous Peoples Movement, like 13 years after the adoption of the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples?
Hi, thank you, Ghazali. Thank you, Tomo. And good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are now at this moment watching this discussion. Yeah, that's a very good question, Ghazali. 13 years since the adoption of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. I'd like to share by saying that there are, of course, some positive advancements and also there are challenges. The positive advancement from my perspective, what I see, it is that, there are, after the adoption of the UN DRIP, there are many member states, at least a few member states, they adopted UN DRIP, Indian national legislation, national constitutions, considered policy, legal policy framework, and also take some very concrete activities for the promotion and protection of indigenous people's rights in line with the UN DRIP. At the same time, there are also some good examples from the UN agencies. They are also considered taking up seriously indigenous people issues in their development activities. But again, if also see, there are also like UN Permanent Forum or expert mechanism and experts report here in their reports. You will see there are so many good examples, and also you will see how they are working together with the member states promoting the UN DRIP. But now the point is in terms of the indigenous peoples organizations, like how we really actually see. One of the most important thing, my personal observations, that the historical background of our indigenous peoples movement is the movement for the self-determination rights. This is one of the core issue. So actually, I think sometimes whether in line with the UN DRIP, whether we are actually possible taking forward the rights of self-determination of indigenous peoples, through the movement or whether we're really losing the track. This is actually one thing sometimes I really see, because see, after the adoption of the UN DRIP, there are so many indigenous people organizations become a project-based activity rather than what we have supporting or whether we have the movement on the self-determination rights. But when it comes to project-based activities, you are somewhere actually bound because you have one side is the interest, somewhere you are also bound to the donor, and then you are in between the trap. Then when it comes to the issue, I don't think it's really you can strongly present you really the demand. Say, for example, we're talking about the right to self-determination. We are referring to the UN DRIP Article 3 all the time. But when it comes to the negotiation, when it comes for the campaign, how strongly you can really put your language forward. That's the challenge I see. And that's what I also see most of the indigenous peoples organization these days. I see talking about the Millennium Development Goals to now SDGs, but the real understanding and the concept, the moment started for the right to self-determination, whether we actually have able to advance it after the UN DRIP adoption. So this is also the thing you, me, the youth caucus, the young generation also need to think of actually how how we can develop the movement from the lens of political context, the youth self-determination rights, instead of more focusing on the project-based activities. And I think if we continue, this is my observation, if we continue too much project-based activities for this and that, then I don't think the real concept, the understanding the self-determination rights, whatever it is, your health, your cultural rights, identity, this and that, but all the center is a self-determination rights. So this is the most important thing.
So talking about those project-based activities, I think right now it's already being a little bit at odds with the rights of indigenous peoples. We should have that as a priority, and now you see the project-based activities more become a priority. All right, we talked about previous 13 years. Let's talk about next 13 years. What is in store for us globally, and just your thoughts on it, and maybe also linking it to the Juma peoples of the Chittagong Hill Tracts movement. Anything that you see or want to see there as well?
See, one of the thing is now we have UN DRIP, and then also we have some legal instruments, and there in many countries also they're developing legal policy framework positive to indigenous peoples. But on the other hand, we also see there are many countries indigenous peoples are struggling to get recognition, to get their constitutional rights, all this and that. And then if you also see the ground of the indigenous peoples movement is all about, their land rights, their self-determination. And then again, if you see, because of that, you see there are so many arrangements between government and indigenous peoples. So from the Bangladesh perspective, what I want to see, like, because I'm coming from the Chittagong Hill Tracts region, this is one of the most heavily militarized and conflict zone. And then you have a 1997 peace accord. So what I expect, this is basically to establish peace in the Chittagong Hill Tracts region, and for that region to implement the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord 1997 properly. And also this, I feel that through implementing the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord, it will respect our distinct culture and identity and empower our governance in the CFC regional governance structure. So that's what I want to see next 13 years. Governments are really coming forward positively.
And yeah, how would anything that the movement in Bangladesh can help you with realize your vision, and any any tangible, practical ideas that you have, or like brain farts, or just napkins, notes, anything that comes to mind?
Well, that's really very big question. The thing is, to me, indigenous people issue is a political issue. And it is not only my country. I assume that this is most of the countries where indigenous peoples are in the street, in the movement for their rights. And this is also the considered most important political issue. So the political issue, it should be resolved through the political means. And then the most important thing is state should also acknowledge of our contribution to the state building process. Post-colonial or any colonial era, indigenous peoples has been contributed of the state building process, but their contribution has not been recognized until today in many countries. This is the thing, like, we expect to survive with respect and dignity, and also to be more inclusive in the state building process and to be part of the state, but the state behavior is negative. So this is the thing we have to see from the political lens, and state should open the door for the indigenous peoples with trust and good faith. I think that way we actually can develop it.
Quickly going into representation, I know you have a lot of amazing thoughts on that, and I think that those thoughts should be at least known by the movement. Asia representative, according to IVGA, 70% of indigenous people, the world's indigenous peoples, are in Asia. Massive amount of indigenous peoples. Any insights in how representation can be ensured by AIPP, so Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact, which you are executive council member of, or the Asia Caucus?
Well, at this moment, I'm not representing AIPP here, but of course, as an individual, what I can say, AIPP, Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact, is a federation member-based organization, okay? The most important thing is that those who, now AIPP have 48 members in 14 countries. The positive part is that most of the members is a movement organizations at the national level. So they are national organizations. So most of the national level movement organizations are part of the AIPP. So this is one thing. And then the leadership or representation also comes through the members selection. I mean, the members, they choose their own representative to the executive council as their voice. So that's how the governance is structured here. But now if you see from the perspective of the Asia Caucus, it is much more wider than the AIPP, because AIPP is limited to the member organizations. But if we see the Asia Caucus, it's a much more wider, because any indigenous peoples organizations from the Asia regions can be part of that, and also those who are directly participating to the UN meetings, they can physically, those who are physically there can also join and contribute to the discussion. And actually the good practice is that always we had a very, our decision-making process was a collective. It is not the single thing, and also we collectively implement whatever we take the decision. So this is the beauty. So that's why how actually the leadership and governance and the representation also, align together to each other.
Moving into like your role as a representative of, not representative. You are expert member of the member of the expert mechanism on the rights of indigenous peoples, representing the Asia region as an individual expert. What's your way of representing Asia in the MRIP?
This is the thing. The way I want to see here, my position, I actually try to build a relationship with the member states to fulfill the mandate here. One is the thing like implementation of the UN DRIP. So, and most of the Asian states actually support it. except 1 or 2 abstention. So this is what I want to see actually, the cooperation from the members and also with the indigenous peoples. Let me tell you one thing, the way I see, MDIP is, think that way, the example, MDIP is a fish of the ocean, and the indigenous peoples is the water of the ocean. So fish cannot survive without water. For me, MDIP cannot survive without the indigenous peoples. So that's why how I see the close collaboration and also putting forward our agenda together.
Binota, I see Tomo waving for attention, like he is waiting to anxiously to answer ask you some questions. So I'll give the floor back to Tomo now.
Okay. I didn't hear you, Tomo. I think you're.
Yes, sorry. Binota, it's very nice to see you and see you well.
Yeah, hi, nice to see you.
And I'm coming from, you know, a background where, you know, I'm not Indigenous person, yet I am interested in Indigenous peoples and their issues and their rights. And I think there are a lot of young people out there who may not be Indigenous themselves, but they are also trying to kind of understand the context of the movement and of the issues that Indigenous people face in their own communities every day. So I've been always told that context is important in engaging with Indigenous peoples meaningfully. So perhaps many people might question, how can people interested in Indigenous peoples and their issues build contextual knowledge to achieve this? Do you have any advice or any texts or books that you would recommend people reading to gain this knowledge in order to support Indigenous peoples and their cause?
If we are talking about from the academic lens, there are of course quite a number of articles which is actually Western product.
Mm.
And there are also some indigenous peoples scholars who have very good document, I mean a very good article written about the indigenous people issues. One of these, you might say, well, I really cannot remember all. What I also read, I was very much influenced reading some of the documents on the indigenous people issues. Understanding international level is also James Anaya books.
Mm.
And also understanding understanding our Asia context of the indigenous peoples is, you know, James Scott has a very good research book, is the arts not being governed, the art of not being governed. James Scott. This is, I really impressed reading those research books and also understanding our indigenous peoples. But when it comes to also the United Nations system, well, my personal navigation was reading more the UN documents, the report, and in the working group indigenous populations, like for example, Madame Daes report. I was reading the past, understanding the indigenous people's movement, the global movement, because my participation to the indigenous global movement actually from 2006 directly through the working group of indigenous population. So that's how I actually try to understand the dynamics, the situation, the politics, the diplomacy as well. And by the way, just come in my mind, the topic Ghazale has put it forward from my point of view, it should be one PhD thesis. Should we think of actually, this is, I think about it because indigenous governance and the diplomacy. And also we also see from the international relations perspective, diplomacy, state to state diplomacy or track 1, track 2 diplomacy is quite many things are there. I mean, time is very limited, so cannot share. But it's really important also to think of from indigenous perspective.
Thank you, Binota.
Binota, I have a final question for you, and I see that coming up in the chat as well. Any possibilities or ideas that you have about collaboration of indigenous peoples with United Nations or UN mechanisms, or vice versa? Any ideas?
The collaboration, of course, so far I know after the World Conference of Indigenous Peoples, since then I see the collaboration method has also a little bit changed. But what I see, the collaboration is actually to see from the more on enhanced participation perspective to the UN system. It is all the UN processes. Actually, this is very important. The participation of indigenous peoples, full and effective participations, enhanced participation issue. So that's where actually can build the collaboration. Otherwise, if you don't participate, you don't have the role of effective participation and consultation and taking the decision, then you really will not understand indigenous people issues. I mean, not you, but those who are actually, those the UN agencies actually dealing with. So they should open for open up for the effective full participation of indigenous peoples. So that's why how the collaboration will strengthen or increase or enhance, whatever it is. So for that reason, I think the one way the current discussion going on, the enhanced participation of indigenous peoples, like you had in Kyoto, this is actually very important avenue to take forward this discussion to the upper level, even though there's one only the General Assembly and Human Rights Council level. But the discussion should be continued how really can enhance to other mechanisms as well. So that's how I see the collaboration with the UN system.
All right, thank you so much, Binota, for your time. I know it's very late already in Australia, where you're resigning right now. Definitely, we're going to talk more throughout the year. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay inspired, and looking forward to continue working with you, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.